The last thing Helena Brooks did before disappearing from the face of the earth was glance at her watch. It was 3:12 p.m. on November 8, 2011, and she still had 3 hours before her flight to Berlin. 3 hours that should have blended forgettably into the routine of any airline protocol. But they became the opening act of a riddle that would torment Heathrow's Terminal 5 for almost a decade. Because somewhere between the crew lounge and the service dock, where her plane idled, Helena Brooks simply slipped out of existence. Before diving deeper into what transpired that gray autumn afternoon, let me ask, if stories like this captivate you as they do me, don't forget to subscribe, because the truth, when it emerges, almost never looks the way anyone expects. The humming of fluorescent lights in the staff corridors was steady, monotonous, as it had been for years. Helena, a flight attendant for British Airways, had paced these spaces hundreds of times. Her uniform charcoal jacket, tailored skirt was flawless, her chestnut hair twisted into the immaculate French knot demanded by company standards. At 32, Helena had gained a reputation on the Heathrow-Frankfurt route for being unfailingly punctual. The kind of colleague who showed up 12 minutes early for every meeting, triple-checked passenger lists, remembered every birthday, never swapped a shift. Consistency was her only luxury in a profession defined by constant flux. That day began like all others. Her alarm rang at 5:07 a.m. in her compact apartment in Windsor, only a short drive from the airport. She brewed a single cup of green tea, ate a banana and a slice of toast, and made her way to the employee parking deck in her red Fiat Punto. She always parked on level 2, space 11D, close enough for a brisk walk, but far enough to avoid the morning crush. CCTV caught her entering Terminal 5 at 7:01, saluting a fellow attendant, pausing quickly at Pré-à-Manger for her usual croissant. Everything was ordinary. Textbook. The incoming flight from Berlin landed on time at 1:59. Helena, as always, helped with overhead bins, poured tea with a warmth that a cluster of passengers would later remember. After seeing everyone off and completing her checks, Helena headed to the staff room. Her layover was unusually long, something she'd mentioned to her friend and co-worker Alice McDougall. She planned to have a snack, maybe scroll through a paperback thriller before the evening's return journey. The crew changing room was peaceful when she entered at 2:48. Another attendant, Nadine Okafor, recalled Helena complimenting her scarf. They spoke briefly about the damp weather and upcoming holiday schedules. Nadine left first, hurrying for the westbound train. She would become one of the last people to see Helena Brooks alive. At 3:12, Helena's mobile rang out with a call to her partner, Lucas Meyer, a medical researcher in Munich. He answered. The call lasted just under a minute. Lucas would later tell investigators that Helena's voice was calm, perhaps a little tired, but otherwise normal. She said she loved him, promised to call when she landed in Berlin. Then the call ended, as all routine calls do. At 3:29, surveillance cameras recorded Helena gliding solo down the corridor, leading from the staff section toward the covered employee parking annex. She held no bag. Her purse, overnight tote, and blazer all remained in her locker. Number 217, the lock still firmly snapped shut. She wore only her uniform blouse and skirt, regulation shoes, and a slender silver bracelet gifted by her sister for her 30th birthday. For exactly 4 seconds, the camera caught her face, direct and unreadable, before Helena turned a corner and dissolved from view. Her car never left space 11D. By 4:50, the pre-flight meeting for British Airways Flight 413 was supposed to begin near Gate 12. 5 attendants, 2 pilots, discussing the manifest, safety checks, weather, and service notes. Helena's chair stayed empty. Alice McDougall found herself glancing at the doorway again and again, expecting her friend to rush in late with some apology lost in thought. stuck in a long phone call. The minutes passed. The tension in the room thickened, tipping from annoyance into a silent, collective dread. The chief purser, Margaret Holloway, tried Helena's mobile. 4 rings, then voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. This simply was not Helena. She was never late, never missed protocol. Boarding was delayed while staff checked the lounges, cafeterias, even first aid. Maybe Helena was ill. Maybe there had been an emergency. But the employee lounge was deserted, except for 2 ground technicians lost in a chess match. The cafeterias hadn't seen her. The medical office had no recent visitors. Finally, with airport security's help, they opened Helena's locker. Everything essential for her layover and evening flight was inside purse with $40 in cash, her UK driver's license and credit cards, an overnight bag with a change of clothes and cosmetics bag, a paperback novel with a transit ticket marking the middle, her charger, a packet of almonds, a faded photo of her and Lucas at a summer picnic, both smiling awkwardly at the camera. Everything as it should be. Flight 413 departed for Berlin over an hour late with a substitute attendant. By then, Margaret Holloway had already filed a missing persons report, and Alice was frantically calling Helena's family. By 6:10, Helena was no longer simply absent, she was officially missing. Helena's mother, Evelyn Brooks, was at her home in Bath when the call came. 8 years retired from the NHS, Evelyn had lived alone since her husband passed away, and Helena had become her anchor. Phone calls every week, visits every month, never a single unexplained silence. When Alice told her Helena had missed her flight, left all her things behind, and no one could find her, Evelyn's reply was disbelief. That's not possible. Not Helena. And then a stunned, sobbing silence. Somewhere in those unreconciled hours, in the controlled, surveilled maze of Heathrow Airport, Helena Brooks had disappeared as if into thin air. Lucas Meyer reached at his Munich flat, caught a plane to London the next morning, repeating what Evelyn and Alice already knew. This was not some impulsive escape. Helena was too reliable. She wouldn't worry them, wouldn't walk away and leave her world behind. By that evening, police at Heathrow's Terminal 5 were reviewing security tapes and questioning staff. Because Helena was a British national vanishing from a major international airport, the Metropolitan Police's Major Crimes Unit was called in, and soon Interpol was notified. By midnight, investigators traced her movements as far as the corridor near the staff parking. Then, nothing, a gap. The next security camera, which should have covered that section, had been reported out of order since Monday. Just bad timing, or something more deliberate? Detective Inspector Sean Foster, who had solved a handful of high-profile disappearances, led the case. He knew that the first 48 hours were vital, the window when witnesses remembered, when fresh traces could still be found. But by the time he stood in the impromptu command post at Heathrow at dawn, almost 14 hours had slipped by. Maps of Terminal 5 blanketed the wall. Helena's employee photo was affixed to briefing boards, her soft smile and steady gaze visible to everyone entering. Foster stared at it, looking for some clue in her expression, something to explain how a seasoned, careful woman could simply evaporate within one of the most watched buildings in Britain. The malfunctioning camera nagged at him. His partner, Detective Sergeant Priya Banerjee, was already digging into maintenance logs, looking for anyone who worked on the system or knew about its scheduled repairs. Was it just random, or had someone used their knowledge of security loopholes? Helena's Fiat remained undisturbed in 11D, doors locked, parking permit still on the dash. The trunk held nothing unusual: a raincoat, an umbrella, a water bottle. The engine was cold. Forensics processed the car anyway, but found nothing, not even so much as a print out of place. A thread finally emerged from a shuttle driver, Alan Kelly, who remembered seeing a woman in a British Airways uniform heading toward the loading bays near the back service entrances just after 3:20. He'd thought it odd she had no jacket, but didn't pay much attention. Those were staff-only areas, maintenance vehicles, baggage dollies, and the constant rumble of deliveries. There, in the maze of anonymous vehicles, a white panel van came up in several accounts, parked illegally next to a side door for nearly a half hour. Someone recalled seeing a woman get in on the passenger side. Video could not supply the plate angles, and lighting conspired to leave all identifying details in shadow. Worse, vehicle logs turned up over 50 white vans entering and exiting that afternoon, many never properly screened. The database of possible vans and their owners grew, each more frustratingly vague than the last. Ideas multiplied faster than answers. Was Helena abducted by a stranger or someone who knew her movements? Did she leave secretly or fall prey to a tragic accident? With little evidence, everything was possible and nearly nothing could be proved. Helena's disappearance was already national news by the morning after her face on TV screens, pleas from her family, interviews with friends who described her as diligent, cautious, kind. Her mother and Lucas joined search teams combing the airport and surrounding neighborhoods. Volunteers handed out flyers, checked cafes and bus stops, and waited for a lead that never came. As the days turned to weeks, leads dried up. The police and Helena's family pressed onward, but every possible clue seemed to dead end. Each white van was tracked and ruled out, and every sighting of Helena across London dissolved into either wishful thinking or simple error. Search parties scoured the woods near the airport, dragged the River Thames close to Heathrow, and used search dogs in the muddy fields on the airport's border, but nothing was found. Helena's friends and colleagues were re-interviewed repeatedly. Her life was dissected. No secret debts, enemies, or hidden turmoil. Records showed a life of careful structure, her contact with Lucas, her regular family routine, even her reading habits and workout schedules. Nothing revealed any motive for disappearance. A single name briefly caught the attention of investigators: Lester Gaines, a maintenance supervisor at Heathrow. Years before, a disciplinary report was filed against him. A junior employee alleged he made inappropriate remarks, but nothing had come of it. Lester was scheduled for routine duties in Terminal 5 the day Helena vanished. He recalled nothing particular that afternoon, but could not provide a strong alibi. He spoke to detectives willingly and provided access to his records and tools, which were thoroughly examined. But there was no direct evidence, no link except his job. By the end of the year, the police case hit a wall. Leads were exhausted, and the story faded from headlines. Helena's mother, Evelyn, refused to let her become another case file. She built a website and updated it relentlessly, posted memories, and responded to every message of sympathy or hope from other families. Lucas, meanwhile, stayed in London for 6 months, obsessively retracing Helena's last steps, talking to her co-workers and handing out flyers. But he, too, found nothing. Over the years, the mystery became a painful scar for everyone who knew Helena. Colleagues moved on. Alice transferred to another airport to escape the memories. But Evelyn held her annual candlelight vigil every November in front of Terminal 5, holding Helena's photo and refusing to give up. In 2019, nearly 8 years after Helena's disappearance, a development at last. A construction crew renovating an old row house in Ealinga district, few miles from Heathrow, broke through a bricked-up wall in the basement. Behind the bricks was a small room, its air stale and chemical. In the corner, a shallow grave. Inside lay the skeletal remains of a woman, partially covered by a tattered airline uniform and a bracelet matching the one Helena wore when she disappeared. Dental records confirmed what Evelyn and Lucas had feared for so long. Helena Brooks had been found. The grim process of investigation began anew. Forensic specialists examined the hidden room in Ealing. The concrete floor was uneven, and digging beneath it revealed the remains had been concealed quickly and with little care. The uniform, while faded, was still British Airways issue, and the slender silver bracelet left no doubt it was Helena. The cause of death, determined by the medical examiner, was blunt force trauma to the skull, a single massive blow, likely with a heavy tool. The injury would have rendered her unconscious instantly and proved fatal within minutes. When Detective Foster heard the confirmation, 8 years of frustration hardened into resolve. He and Banerjee scrutinized property records for the Ealing house. It had once belonged to Caroline Pritchard, an elderly widow who died in a nursing home in 2013. But in late 2011, right after Helena's disappearance, records showed the basement had undergone urgent repairs, including concrete, poured by a small local contractor named Maurice Gaines. The name Gaines triggered alarm. Maurice was the brother of Lester Gaines, the maintenance supervisor at Heathrow questioned so many years before. Police swiftly re-examined old interviews and searched for new evidence. The case that had been cold and hopeless suddenly snapped into focus. Detectives obtained warrants, searched Lester's home and workspace, and seized years' worth of papers, electronics, and tools. In a locked drawer, they found a collection of photographs, many of female staff taken without their knowledge, including multiple pictures of Helena. They also discovered a worn, oil-stained wrench matching the description of the murder weapon, with faint traces of blood and tissue. Lester was taken into custody. Under interrogation, he tried to deflect at first, but when presented with the mountain of circumstantial evidence, he broke. His confession painted a tragic picture. He'd become obsessed with Helena, watched her movements, and seized upon her long layover as an opportunity. When confronted in an isolated part of the airport and denied, he lashed out in a panic and struck her. Faced with what he'd done, he asked his brother Maurice for help, and together they moved Helena's body and sealed it in the Ealing basement. Both men were arrested. Maurice, though less implicated, admitted helping conceal the body. The case that had haunted a family and the public imagination for 8 years was finally closed. But for Helena's loved ones, there would be no true closure, only the knowledge of what had really happened on that November afternoon.